Hi, I'm Michael Brown. I'm a journalist and author, 30 books now. One of the most citing of which I'm going to speak to you about in a second, but I've written about many different subjects. I was started out as a newspaper reporter in Niagara Falls, New York, but broke the Love Canal story, a famous toxic waste disaster, and was nominated for several Pulitzer Prizes. My My material has appeared in publications like the New York Times Magazine, Reader's Digest, American Health, New York Magazine, The Atlantic Monthly, and kind of a laundry list. But uh, the books, they've gone everywhere from writing about the mafia and toxic chemical waste, the environmental disasters like Love Canal, to now spiritual topics, Christian Catholic topics. Because while I was writing that book on the mafia back in the early to mid 1980s, I had, I guess, what you would call a conversion experience or a wake up call. And one time I was in Newark, New Jersey. I was working with a lot of detectives, FBI agents, state intelligence types, and they had put me in touch with an informant who had been a hitman. And he took me around and was taking me around uh, the Newark, New Jersey area, showing me various spots where he and this other accomplice, who was the subject of my book, had killed people and buried them. Anyway, during that whole thing, I had a bizarre experience. It was a dream, it had to do with the Archangel Michael. Long story short, I came quickly back to the faith I grew up in, both going to the local church on 90th Street where I lived, East 90th Street on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, called Our Lady of Good Counsel, and attending a Pentecostal, evangelical, a charismatic type, non denominational church on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. So I was uh, coming back to both in very powerful way. Anyway, starting in around 1990, I began to work full time, as it turned out, in the realm of mysticism and spirituality, and as I said, prophecy. Uh, I had been all over the place. When I was a secular journalist, I had appeared on the Today Show, Nightline, hundreds of radio and TV shows across the country. Did three or four national tours for Random House and Simon and Schuster and Harper Collins. But I dropped all that in the early 1990s to work full time on spiritual books. The first one was on a guy who had experiences in the Soviet Gulag, and then I had a very well known book called The Final Hour. It was even on the Joan Rivers show and Sally Jesse Raphael and so forth, a Christian Catholic bestseller. Well, you go through the times and you learn a lot of things, and I tend to focus now a lot on prophecy and healing. We have a website called spiritdaily.com, and now I've come out with this new book. It's called Future Events, a prophecy of coming times. And it focuses on those famous apparitions. Even if you're not Catholic, you've probably heard of them, of the Virgin Mary at Fatima, Portugal, where there was a sun miracle. There have been movies made about this, and the Virgin Mary came to warn these three shepherd kids of events that were going to happen, kind of chastisements from God if mankind didn't reform. She predicted accurately at Fatima that World War I was about to end, but that if there wasn't that reformation, spiritual transformation, that there would be a second greater war, which of course later occurred 2 decades later, a little over 2 decades later, as World War II. Devastating wars. She predicted the rise of atheism, of communism in Russia, and how Russia would be the scourge of the world. these prophecies came true. She predicted a great sign that occurred in the late 1930s, a unprecedented aurora borealis that was followed by Hitler and his annexation of Austria. There were three secrets given to these shepherd kids. The third one was not revealed until relatively recently, until the year 2000 by John Paul II, Pope John Paul II. And we finally came to learn that in that secret was this image that three kids were shown of an angel ready to torch the world with a flaming sword, as if to start it on fire, of flames that were quenched, however, by the Virgin Mary, who was also pictured in this image. Well, for many years, that was in 1917 that was given to these children, just before the end of World War I. And for many years, the surviving visionary there, Sister Lucy dos Santos, she became a nun, agonized over to whether to release it. Her bishop wanted her to, instructed her to, ordered her to, but she was not being given that go-ahead to release it by heaven, by God, by Jesus Christ, who also appeared to her. But 1944, after many months of illness and, as I said, agonizing, praying ardently, suddenly she got what she called an enlightenment, called it a revelation, a locution. And I focus a lot in this new book on that enlightenment because it is fascinating. A lot of people thought when they heard about that image in the year 2000, when the third secret was released, that image of the angel torching the world was about nuclear warfare, and maybe it is. But maybe it entails other things as well, which is what I discuss in this book, with further prophecies, with messages from elsewhere, with locutions and visions and apparitions from other places aside from Fatima, more recent ones. But anyway, in 1944, when she was given this so-called enlightenment, she was told that flaming sword was, I guess, not so much setting the world on fire as she put it, as touching the axis of the earth and unleashing